mic is good. Huh? Hey guys, welcome to this new video. In today's video, we're gonna talk about how foreigner can buy properties in Vietnam. And when I mean about properties, there is different type of property that we can own as a foreigner in Vietnam. But again, with owning, there is a lot of issues and legal aspects and ownership little detail that are very important to be mentioned. So in today's video, I'm with Nhan and we're gonna
expert
and we're gonna dig into that subject. Nhan, I'm very happy to have you today. Can you give us briefly insights about your experience in real estate?
Yes, after the successful of the previous video about the market update, Kenya Mavan, our channel, and Move to Asia, we decided to keep providing much more helpful information, and especially that we want to explain most of the concern from the buyer when they start, especially when the first time they start to invest into Vietnamese, to the real estate market. And again, me as a professional working in this real estate industry for a couple of years, and from different aspects, I start as a sales agent. I providing the consultancy services for the foreign investor, and now I working for the real estate developer. So that means I join into the chain to create the property in Vietnam. So I take a lot of chance to really jump deep down into the legal issue, to help the client to explain the very detail in the legal system, to make them understand the reason why they have the different type of contract, what will be the term of the contract they might be forget, and what will be the thing that they already missing or misunderstanding at the beginning. So
very good, Nhan. So before we go deep into the legal and ownership aspect, what are basically the type of properties that foreigner can buy in Vietnam?
So normally when we mention about a property, that we have three types of the property that we can conclusion at this moment. Firstly will be the land, right? Land slot. And secondly is the thing that we are very common to see in the urban area, like the apartment or the townhouse or the shop house. And nowadays we have not a new type, but it's getting on the train. It will be, we call the resort real estate, like the condotel or the villa, on the beach villa. So mainly we have three types of property in Vietnam, but especially because in this episode we are just mentioned about the foreigner buyer. So I will narrow down the area for the foreigner. So firstly, for the land, according to Vietnamese land law at the moment, then the foreigner are not allowed to own the land in Vietnam, except in the case that they have the land is only lease term. So you just only can sign the lease contract if you want to have the land. And most of the landlord we call, or the ownership of the land, it have to be represented as a company or the firm. You are not allowed to be individual person to have your ownership on the land, because this is the restriction is associated to the national security, because it's very risky if you allow the foreigner have the ownership on the land of your country. This will be causing a lot of insecure for your country.
Okay, Nhan, so individual foreigners can own lands in Vietnam.
Yes.
We're gonna explain a little bit what are the solutions if you still wanna invest into lands and in the other type of property. But before that, Nhan, can you give us the big picture, like how it works usually as a foreign individual? If you wanna invest in Vietnam, do you need a bank account? Do you need to travel to Vietnam? What's the major things foreigners should know?
So as a basic procedure for a foreigner to invest real estate in Vietnam, firstly that we mentioned a bit about the law updates from 2015. Before the 2015, when you're a foreigner, you are not allowed to buy the property in Vietnam for the investment purpose. At that time, it's very restriction regulation for the foreigner to buy the property. You have to stay in Vietnam, you have the lasting visa in here, you have to have a permanent job with the contract is still on the term. You have to prove your financial pictures of what you're doing, your salary, your income to your bank account. And you are only allowed to buy one unit with living purpose only. That is from the 2015 before. But after 2015, the law has been updated to attract more direct investment from the foreigner. So they have changing. Firstly, that you don't have to live in Vietnam to buy the property in Vietnam. You don't have to require to have the visas in here to buy it in here. You don't have to acquire to have the job, or you have to work, or you have to prove your income in Vietnam to buy the property. But there are few requirements that you might be concentrate. Firstly, you have to be fully legal allowance to enter in Vietnam. That means with your passport, it have to have a stamp on it. That means they allow you to legally enter to our country. Secondly, all the transactions that happen in Vietnamese that have to be working on the local Vietnam Dong bank account. So you are not allowed to transfer your money directly from France, from US, or any other country directly to the developer in Vietnam, because this is one of the policy to avoiding the money laundering, I would say. And lastly, then when you do the property purchasing process, it will be a lot of paper that you have to need to sign. Like we have the deposits contract, we have the sale and purchasing contract, but you can only sign the deposit contract overseas. But when to the time that you have to sign the SPA, or we call the sales and purchasing contract, then you have to be appearance in Vietnam to sign it in here.
Okay, so deposits, let's say you have a project that you are interested in investing, it can be done from overseas. And then after you have to enter Vietnam, you can also open the bank account from overseas, right? If you
actually, it's not. For the bank, we talk about the bank, right? Not all the bank in Vietnamese working right now is providing that kind of services for the foreigner. Only very few international bank is providing it, including Standard Chartered, UOB, and Shinhan. And Shinhan is like prioritized for the Korean client. And with this kind of bank, they also require you the entrance stamp on your passport. That means you are fully legal to enter Vietnam, and then you're allowed to open a bank account. You are not allowed to open a bank account in another branch and then move that branch into Vietnam as well.
So you enter Vietnam, you finalize the paperwork to get your bank account ready. You can at that time sign the sales purchase agreement directly with the developer.
Yep.
And finally, at that time, let's say you have some installments that are already done on a certain project, and after a time you can be 100% owning that property, or if you buy on the secondary market, you are the owner of a property as soon as you sign
SPA. Yes, yes. And as a foreigner, you have fully right to use with your property. So that means not like before 2015 that you only can live in that. With your property in Vietnam nowadays, you can rent it, you can resell it, and you can use it for any other purpose that you can join. But there is an update that I want to highlight, that because the political issues and the Chinese citizen is very restricted to buy the property in Vietnam because of their passport. You know, the map of the China is associated with our Hoàng Sa, Trường Sa Island. So this is not allowed the Chinese citizen when they enter into Vietnam, they have the stamp on their passport, because the government of denying stamping on their passport. They will have the certification come along with, but not on their passport. So they are not allowed to, they will be restricted to buy the property in Vietnam.
So most of the nationalities can invest easily, and it can be more complicated for Chinese.
Yep.
Okay, so Nhan, now let's talk about the main type of properties that you can buy in Vietnam. The first one you mentioned about the land.
Yep.
So you say as an individual you cannot directly buy a land as a foreigner, but the option that is commonly used is to set up a company. And that's the case that is going on mostly in manufacturing areas. We know Lego opened a manufacturing plant here in Vietnam. We had a couple of different international companies that are having their factory here. So obviously most of those international companies will also somehow own a land, right?
So to be understand it clearly enough that we say that the individual is not allowed to own the land, right? But for the corporation, the FDI investor, they are invest into country to open the factory, the showroom, or doing any type of investment. So mainly the type of the land that they are investing will be the commercial land. So with the commercial land, they have only the right to lease the land for 50 years to develop the factory, the warehouse, the port, or any etc. The facility to support for their business. Here you mentioned about the Lego, we have the Coca-Cola in the Long An, and also the other manufacturer, they establish their business now in the V-ship industrial zone, and will be having the same. So for that type will be the commercial type for the land, and the company as a firm, they can allow to establish their business, their factory, their warehouse on it. And in the second case, like your case, when you are a foreigner individual and you still want to own your land, then the easy way is you get married with a Vietnamese citizen, and then they can appear on the paper on behalf of your ownership, and that is the easiest way.
So first way, you set up a company, but it's obviously not for small scale projects.
Yep.
Only big corporation can do it. And secondly, you can use a nominee, so someone that you trust. It can be, as Nyan said, your wife, or it can be just a very good friend, someone that you know for a long time, and then you will trust that person enough to be somehow the real owner
Yep.
of your land. So that's the first type of product that foreigners can jump into if they are considering investing into the Vietnamese real estate market. Now, what about the second one that is also very common in condominium? You have all the fancy projects in the megalopolis, Ho Chi Minh City, Da Nang, Hanoi as well. How does it work for such type of property?
All right, so this is the main type of property that a lot of foreigners focus on is apartment, right? As you say, this is getting more popular and very familiar with the investor nowadays. So when we mention about the apartment, they will associate it with one of very what do you call, like the highline point is called the quota. The quota is mean like when you're a foreigner in each project, you have allowed 30% of the quota allowing to sell for the foreigner, and the foreigner have the right to buy that quota under their name. And after the quota, it will lead to two types of different contract. The first type of the first type of contract was the sales and purchasing agreement, as I mentioned. This contract will create the ownership as a freehold, but with the term of 50 years. So there is nothing forever in Vietnamese, like most of the Vietnamese people, they always seeking for, they want to have their house forever after, not inspiring. But for the foreigner, they just got 50 years, even that is the ownership at the SPA. And the second type of the contract would be the long-term lease contract. In terms of if they run out of the quota in that project and they still have the foreigner, they still want to buy it, then they will sign the second type of contract, is a lease contract. And with lease contract, they establish the leasehold, but also with 50-year term as well at the same. So mainly there's not much of different in two types of this contract. But during my working experience when I was in Seoul, I figured out that a lot of customers, they are very concerned about this type of contract. They say, if I buy SPA, it's more trusted, it's more protective, it's more owning, it's just like mine. But if lease contract, it's just like I go to your house, I lease your house, and one day you can ask me to go out. So there's not anything like ownership. But to be fair, in reality, there is not much of thing different in those kind of contract. You have the same term of time, 50 years, both SPA or the long-term lease. Secondly, you have fully right to resell your property for all Vietnamese and foreigner. That is the advantage for the foreigner when you are an investor for the property market in Vietnam. You can resell it for a foreigner with SPA or lease contract. But when you resell it for a Vietnamese like me, it will be automatically convert into the long-term, convert into the SPA contract. So you have two options to sell it.
Okay, Nyan, one question that comes in mind now is what happened after the 50 years?
Ah, yes. Someone will come and take our house, right? Just kidding. So firstly, that people, not just only for you as a foreigner, question, and with the other Vietnamese, they were asking the same thing. And this is already appearing with the point in the law, in the land law in Vietnam already. After inspiring time, for example, if your land have the term until the 2050, and after 2050, what will happen with your land? What will happen with your house? Then, according to our current law right now, they have been pointed out it's very easy for you to submit your document to extend this term of time. And this has been appearing in our land law already. It's just only because that we, Vietnamese country with our history line right now is not long enough to see 50 years expire from any project yet. So we still have no case study at the moment. But in the law, they already point out that you just need only 6 months before expiring day. You submit your requirement about extend the term of time of your land, and then after you submit it, they will approval for extend you another 50 years. And of course, when they extend for you another 50 years, you have the what they call the responsible to pay the tax on the land of your ownership. And it will be happen the same if you are a Vietnamese and you're having the land with the commercial land. So this is quite familiar with the industrial investor. So when they do with the commercial land, it's everything in 50 years. So they know that, all right, after 50 years, I will extend this term of time for my property, for my warehouse, for my factories in here, and I keep doing it.
Okay, Nhan, very good clarification. You have also another point that have to be highlighted. Is what about the pink book?
Yeah.
The golden certificate that show you that you are the real owner. What happened in some of the condominium recently is some foreigner finally having their pink book released. What is the situation about that?
All right. So pink book, me myself, I'm very curious. I don't understand why so many foreigners they are very well known about the pink book. So here's the thing. Pink book, the correct name is the certification of the ownership of the property on the land. You don't own the land. So pink book is not mentioned about your ownership with the land. Just only mention about your right to use the land and your ownership with the property land on it. So to be fair, to be clear, in Vietnamese, there is nobody as an individual or any company type have the right to own the land. The land is owned by all the people and the government on the behalf of the people to manage and operate it. So you just have the ownership with your property on the land. So we make clear clarification for the pink book. Secondly, the reason why people want to sign the SPA because they think that when you sign the SPA, that means you have the ownership, and this will lead you to the pink book with your name on it. But when you sign the lease contract, it's leasehold, so it's hard to bring it to the pink book. But to be fair to reality right now, since the 2015 until now, 7 years passed by. Me, myself, I don't really see a lot of projects can issue the pink book for the foreigner. Just very, very few of them with a very reputable developer like Capitaland, like the Vinhome, then they can issue the pink book for foreigner. But some of the other projects, some of the other developers, to be honest, until now, I don't really see a lot of pink book with under the name of the foreigner. However, also the point that I want to add on for you to really deep down understand like this. When you sign the sale and purchasing contract with the developer or the lease contract with the developer, the relationship on that contract will be between you as an individual purchaser and the developer. So when the issue comes up, when the problem happens, you can negotiate person to person with the developer to figure out the best solution for both. But when your property issued into the pink book, the relationship in this will be turned into yourself with our Vietnam government. So when any issue happens, any problem comes up, you have to deal with the government, not developer. And of course, when you're dealing with the government, it will be more complicated, will be more difficult to deal with it. So my point is here is not about having pink book is good or not good. It's about the advantage, the advantage and disadvantage when you get the pink book. Lastly, when you got the pink book with your name on it, you are not allowed to resell it for the foreigner. You have to resell it for Vietnamese buyer because, as I mentioned, the government will not allow the foreigner to own the land as their name. So that is the thing that will, if you have the pink book come along, then you have to know the way is how can this work.
Okay, so good precision about the pink book. Final question that I have from the first thing that you were saying. If I am a foreigner and I have either, I'm married, let's say, to a Vietnamese, I have two options, right? I can either buy in a certain unit under the foreign quota,
yeah,
or I can buy under, for instance, my wife, who would be Vietnamese.
Yes.
from a foreign perspective, what's the pros and cons of each options?
All right. So the first we have the scenario that you are getting a wife, Vietnamese, or wife or husband. They have the Vietnamese citizens, and you have two options that you can buy as your foreigner quota, or you can buy as under Vietnamese quota. So normally that the foreigner, they would prefer to have the foreigner quota because they have more option to resell it. They can resell it for foreigner, and they can resell it for Vietnamese buyer. However, when that will comes up with another thing, that when you choose the foreigner, they will have the higher price. Normally, the price for foreigner with the SPA contract will be somewhere like 5 to 7% differences from the Vietnamese buyer. And they will also have a different price between the long-term lease contract and SPA as well. So if you are willingly to pay the differences and you want to have your own quota on the foreigner, then you will choose the first option. Then use your real identity as a foreigner and buy the quota for the foreigner. Otherwise, then you just using your wife or your husband name and buy in the Vietnamese quota, and then everything will be a lot more easier.
Okay. So now I think you have a better understanding about properties that you can buy inside condominium.
Yep.
Now let's go to the last one, that will be all the resort hotel. The catchy term is like condotel.
Yeah.
How does it work for such projects for foreign investors?
All right. So nowadays, as I mentioned, the third type of property is the developing, and also now is a new trend in Vietnam is the resort real estate, or the hotel, or the condotel, or the villa. But most of these kind of property are developed on the commercial land. So no matter you are Vietnamese or you are foreigner, the term of the duration term of this type of property is just only 50 years only. So there's no difference between me or you as a Vietnamese buyer or the foreigner buyer to own this kind of property. The only thing that, because the foreigner is not really familiar with this kind of market yet, normally they just focus on the CBD with the central business district with the regular type of apartment or the shop house, but they're not really familiar with the new type of resort or the condotel. But first thing is the duration will be the same for Vietnamese and for foreigner, 50 years. And because it just only had a 50 year, and now in the Vietnamese law system, they are not really have the framework yet for this type of property. So about the pink book, or whether Vietnamese do get a pink book or not, there's still no one can really have the precisely answer for this question. So it will be very dependable on the developer whether they want to sell it by the SPA or the long-term lease. For example, with my project we are doing right now, we trying to avoiding to make the client have the high expectation about the pink book come along with this type of property. So we just choose one type of the contract is lease contract. So when you go to see our project, we will say it directly to you that, okay, this is the commercial land, this property will have like 50-year leasehold, and after that we will follow to the law system to extend your duration after that, and both are the same for Vietnamese and foreigner.
Okay, good, Jan. So I guess now you have a better understanding about the different types of product that you can buy in Vietnam as a foreigner. What's your thought? You reveal some point that sometimes the framework is not 100% clear, but in the law there are still some kind of roots and some kind of foundations. How do you see the real estate market evolving and to getting more and more foreign direct investment? Do you think it's going to go in the good direction into making everything more clear, more transparent for foreigners and Vietnamese?
Yes, as I mentioned, firstly that we are a still developing country, and attracting FDI is always the priority from the government, and real estate is one of the top 3 investment attractive channel from the foreigner. And also in the 2022, the government has been had so many meetings to do the updating for the land law and the housing law as well, to be more transparent, to be more clear and detailed, to help the foreigner investor can easily to approach our property, to be more easier in the document process, to help them to easier to purchase, to resell, and make the profit with the investment. And lastly, as I say, we are doing a lot of effort to make the real estate market more transparency. Like in our previous episode we are mentioned about the notarized system. Now they are more restricted to help you to prove the real price when you do the transaction in the secondary market, to make this market is more transparent, more clear, and you can know that when was the last time price transact for that property, and if you are the third, the fourth, or the fifth buyer, you can know how much has been increased for that property already. And that is still a lot of different kind of activity from the government to encourage the foreigner to invest in this country. And I think that this is still a very good term of time for the foreigner to invest in Vietnam real estate market.
So before it was a bit the wild west, right? Everything was a bit emerging, and then the framework was not 100% clear and detailed. But Vietnam is getting more and more going into a direction that, of course, they need foreign direct investment. There is a lot of money going in Vietnam. We know Hong Kong, Japan, Singaporean are really into jumping in that emerging market. So there will be also a lot of, and I think the trend will continue to grow here in terms of this potential.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, we see that the global nowadays is facing a lot of issue. Every country, they have their own issue. We have USA after the COVID-19, the inflation increasing dramatically. In Europe, they are facing with the Russian and Ukraine fighting, and this impactful directly with the oil supply chain from them, and it's very unstable environment for investor. And also the trade war between US and China has made a lot of the big corporation is look for relocated their factory in the new country. And Vietnam, with our stable government system, political stability, and also we are creating a lot of attract policy for the international investor to attract more FDI, and we create a good environment for the growing. It's a developing country, we have a room to grow, so it still have a lot of chance for the investor, for both corporation and individual, to make their own profit in this market.
Okay, thanks Nhan for your insight. I think it was very important to clarify all those legal questions that foreigner may have about Vietnam real estate market. We will leave below in the description some link, some resources if you want to learn more about Vietnam real estate market. If you enjoy the video, leave a thumbs up,
like and share, and don't forget to click our subscribe button to be updated the newest our video. And please comment below what kind of topic that you want us to bring it to you, because I receive like 100 of questions every day about the real estate market from a foreigner investor, and we really hope that we can summarize all of that question and turn it into the videos like this, and then you can have the full information before making a good decision. Once again, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the information that we're providing. Have a good trip and make a good investment. Bye bye.
Bye bye.